Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something that feels like a real high-stakes diplomatic poker game. It's between Washington and Brasilia, and Brazil's President Lula, well, he seems to have just gone all in, defying, decades of diplomatic norms. The stakes, we're talking billions of dollars, and maybe even Brazil's place on the world stage. Okay, let's unpack them.
Right. Our mission today is really to pull out the key nuggets here from the sources we have. We want to connect the dots on the economic impact for Brazil, which is significant, and also the diplomatic fallout from this pretty provocative exchange. We need to understand not just what happened, but really why it matters in the bigger picture.
And honestly, there's some twists here I didn't quite expect. I'm really stuck on this one phrase that keeps popping up. Truco seis. What's that about? Okay, but first, let's set the scene. The U.S. announcement, it's a big one. A new 50% tariff on imports of Brazilian goods. And it's hitting key sectors, right? Steel, aluminum, even agro-industry. This isn't just tinkering around the edges.
No, not at all. And while the U.S. Department of Commerce line is, the standard protect national industry, a 50% tariff like this feels, much more aggressive than typical protectionism. It's almost like an economic shot across the bow. It raises serious questions, really, about global supply chains and maybe reflects some intense domestic pressure in the U.S., too. It's not just routine shielding.
And the immediate fallout in Brazil looks pretty stark. We're talking thousands, maybe tens of thousands of jobs linked directly to these exports, especially, it seems, in Brazil's south and southeast regions.
Exactly. Those regions are heavily reliant. And a 50% tariff, it basically makes those Brazilian products instantly uncompetitive overseas. So the predictions are pretty grim. A sharp drop in exports is almost certain. Factories will likely have to cut production.
Which means layoffs. Potentially widespread layoffs.
Yes, potentially mass layoffs. It hits people directly, their livelihoods. And you have to remember the context here. The U.S. is Brazil's second largest trading partner. Losing significant market share isn't just, a temporary setback. It could genuinely shift trade dynamics. You might see competitors Mexico, maybe Canada, perhaps even China stepping in to fill that gap. That could have really long-term structural consequences for Brazil's economy.
Okay, so that's the economic pressure. Now here's where, for me, the story takes this really unexpected turn. President Lula's reaction. Instead of the usual diplomatic dance, he went for what? Irony, provocation. It was definitely not the standard playbook.
Not at all. It's a very deliberate choice, it seems, to step away from that conventional diplomatic posture.
And the language was sharp. He's quoted saying things like, if Trump wants a fight, he'll get one. If he raises, I raise six. Now, you mentioned truco seis earlier. Can you break that down? Why is using that kind of language in, international politics seen as so reckless?
Right. It's crucial context. Truco is this really popular card game in Brazil. And shouting truco is basically a challenge. You're raising the stakes. Say six is like raising the stakes even higher. It signals this super aggressive, almost defiant, bluffing stance. It's macho, really. Domestically, maybe it plays well, shows strength. But on the international stage, reckless is the word many analysts are using. It's widely seen as a diplomatic disaster waiting to happen.
A disaster. Why so strong?
Well, think about it. The U.S. is the world's economic superpower. It has immense influence. A miscalculation, a misspoken word, and this kind of high-stakes game with them, it could literally cost Brazil billions of dollars. And provoking Donald Trump specifically, given he's leading the 2024 U.S. election polls, that's a particular concern diplomats raise. This kind of rhetoric could genuinely, slam doors shut for Brazil if there's a change in the U.S. administration. It impacts potential trade deals, partnerships, everything.
Okay, so it's seen as a major diplomatic gamble, maybe even a misstep. But playing devil's advocate for a second, could there be any upside for Lula? Maybe signaling independence, rallying his base at home against a foreign power. Does that ever work?
That's a fair question. And yes, leaders sometimes use external conflicts to boost domestic support. It's a known tactic. But the consensus here seems to be that any short-term domestic political gain from looking tough is likely to be completely dwarfed by the potential long-term economic and diplomatic damage. Historically, when smaller nations successfully stood up to superpowers, they usually had broader international backing or very specific leverage. Neither seems obvious here. It feels a bit like, sacrificing your most powerful piece in chess just to show you're bold rather than making a smart move. And if this tension doesn't ease up quickly, the economic risk for Brazil are really quite severe. We could be looking at Brazil tipping into a technical recession. That means 2 straight quarters where the economy shrinks. It's not just a statistic. It affects financial markets, could lead to capital flight, maybe even devalue the currency, the real.
Beyond just the job losses and factory slowdowns we talked about.
Exactly. It's like a snowball effect. It could freeze up credit for Brazilian companies, cause suppliers to default, maybe even hit consumer confidence. It ripples outwards. And there's another risk. If Brazil keeps up this aggressive tone, other countries might start watching. They might think, maybe we should review our own trade deals with Brazil. It could signal a broader shift in how the world sees Brazil as a trading partner.
Which brings us back to a fundamental question, doesn't it? Why not just invest in diplomacy?
Yeah.
Brazil has this long, respected diplomatic tradition. Itamaraty, the foreign ministry, is known for being professional, effective. Diplomacy is how you build agreements, how you smooth over tensions, protect your country's interests. It's not weakness. It's strategic intelligence, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially for a country aiming for a bigger role globally.
Precisely. This moment really calls for responsibility, for strategy from the Brazilian government. Catchphrases might sound good to your supporters at home, but they just don't work in the complex world of international relations. They don't sustain anything. Brazil really needs to project itself as a mature player, someone capable of serious dialogue, of negotiation. You'd hope that Itamaraty, the experienced diplomats, can step in quickly, try to resume dialogue, and sort of navigate through this tricky spot.
Because you're right, in the end, the ones who pay the price for this kind of political bravado, it's always the workers, the business owners, the ordinary people, and the economy as a whole. So that really wraps up our deep dive today into this tangled web of economic protectionism, high-stakes diplomacy, and national leadership. It's a fascinating story. You've got the immediate economic hit, but also these much bigger questions about the long-term consequences of a leader's, very bold, maybe very risky move.
It really is striking, especially when you consider Brazil's usually quite strong diplomatic track record. It brings up a fundamental question, I think. When you're faced with this kind of economic pressure from a superpower, how do you balance asserting your own national interests with, maintaining those absolutely crucial international relationships? Is it always a trade-off, a zero-sum game? Or is there a path to protect your people without completely alienating your most important partners? It's something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. We hope you found these insights useful. What strategic choices would best serve a nation caught in a situation like this? Thanks for diving deep with us today.